Welcome to this Patreon. We're going to talk today about the Ziggurats throughout Iraq and Iran. And the reason we're talking about that is because the Pope had recently made a visit throughout Iraq mostly. I do think he visited Iran prior to that. And let's talk a minute about his visit. The Pope went throughout Baghdad and visited some of the Ziggurats. He did go to a Syriac Catholic church in the capital. It's called Our Lady of Salvation, where 52 Christians and police were killed in attacks by jihadists from a precursor group to ISIS in 2010. The weird thing about it is they were actually slaughtered on October 31st. Now, the Pope will fly south to the Shia holy city of Najaf also. And there he was visited by the Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani. He is a 90-year-old prime marja, or spiritual reference for millions of Shia in Iraq and elsewhere. He did have that meeting with the 90-year-old Ali al-Sistani. The Pope attended an interreligious meeting at the ancient site of and that's where we're going to focus today, on the Ziggurats and the Ziggurat of is the nativity of Abraham, and that's what we wanted to talk to you about today. So lots of things about the Ziggurats, and let's talk about what is a Ziggurat. Ziggurats are a dwelling place for the ancient gods. They're a little bit different than pyramids, although they date to around the same time. And like I said, they are mostly throughout Iran and Iraq, what's modern day Iran and Iraq. They were then known as Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia means in the middle, primarily talking about between the Euphrates and the Tigris rivers. They were common to the Sumerians, Babylonians, and Assyrians from approximately 2200 until 500 BC. Some of the architectural marvels still stand today, the ruins. The word ziggurat is derived from the Babylonian zikkuratitude, meaning mountain, peak, or pinnacle. The ancients consider the mountains to be a link between the heavens and the earth. And so their function as a celestial mountain was manifested for a way to get to the gods. Several of them had either ramps or stairways, usually on the outside of them. Several of the houses were named for particular gods. The Ziggurat of in particular, we know was named for the moon god, Sin, or he had a different name too. We'll see that in a minute. And so they were literally stairways to heaven. 7 levels of the ziggurat are said to have represented the numbers of heavens, planes of existence, planets, and the 7 metals and the colors associated with them. The resemblance to the Egyptian pyramids and the pyramidal structures of Central America have caused numerous academic debates. However, as ziggurats had no funerary purposes, they say, although we will find that there were several tombs there, so I'm not quite sure how they come up with that. Each city had its own patron god, and that god was usually perceived to be the landowner of the temple and its surrounding areas. The king was his bailiff, and the king's daughter was the high priestess of the shrine. The priests were the only ones allowed inside the ziggurat temples, and they were tasked with attending the needs to the gods, giving them absolute power over the society. The temple at the base of the ziggurat was where the deity inhabiting it was fed and clothed daily. The ziggurat also had sacred workshops, granaries, storehouses, kitchens, rooms for priests and slaves who were employed in melting, weaving, and preparing goods for sales. Access to the shrine was either via exterior stairways, series of ramps on one side, like I talked about, or even spiral ramps from base to summit. So they were very, very interesting. There is one called the Tochaga Zanbil in Iran. That is the largest one. So that's kind of like a marvel still in Iran. So that's pretty interesting. So there you go. Now let's go back to and let's talk about that one. And let's see if I can make the screen share here and bring you up the PowerPoint. So let's bring up the PowerPoint here. So the ziggurat of is built by the Sumerian king Namu, as far as the archaeological evidence that was actually Leonard Woolley. I believe he was a Sir Leonard Woolley. I know he has a title, I believe it was Sir, but he did the greatest excavation at the site. It was known for the moon god Sin or Nana in 2100 BCE. It did in all its glory stand 26 meters high. Now, this ziggurat of there are actually 25 ziggurats across Iran and Iraq. I was really shocked to find that out. Again, they are in various states of ruin, but one of the most famous that we would know is the ziggurat Etemenanki, or of Babylon, or the Tower of Babel. Now, why would we say that? If you knew your Hebrew, you would know that Babylon is Babel in Hebrew. So Tower of Babel for the god Marduk. That is what the Tower of Babel or the Babylon ziggurat is for the god Marduk. And it is traditionally thought to be the Tower of Babel in Babylon. Now, I know there are other claims to fame for the Tower of Babel throughout other places, but it would make sense, knowing that the Hebrew word for Babylon is Babel, that would make sense. Now, again, we have the ziggurat in which is Iraq. We have the ziggurat Akhar Kuf, which is in Baghdad. And we have the ziggurat Kanga Zanbil, which is in Iran, and that is the largest. Many of these are on the UN's site for heritage. The ziggurat Sialk Kashan, which is in Iran. The ziggurat White Temple of Uruk in ancient Sumer. It's quite fascinating. I was trying to find all 25 of them. It doesn't seem to be a complete list that is found very easily, but that is a fascinating study if anybody wants to look at it. Now, going back to the ziggurat of which is the ziggurat that the Pope visited because it is the nativity of Abraham, the land that Abraham was born in. And we will go and take a look at the Bible to prove that. That's why he was particularly interested in this. It is on an air base, our air base. I can't remember the name of it currently. I'm sorry, I didn't have that for you, but it is protected by our air base. In particular, like I said, Leonard Woolley did a lot of excavation on this site, and there was a royal burial site of the Sumerians. Several of the royals were buried there. In particular, Queen Puabi was recorded on cylinders. There were several cylinders. They actually took several of the things that Leonard Woolley found there, and they're in the University of Pennsylvania, I believe, and in the British Museum, that you can find several of these things. Now, these are one of the cylinder seals of Puabi, and they're numbered here. This one is from the British Museum of London, that is here. And his wife, Ninbanda, from the first dynasty of So now, depending who you're reading, there was a huge cache from Queen Puabi, and several of her attendants were buried with her. Later on, they finally gave you more of the details about this. And so I'm going to pull that article up for us here. Let me take a look here. Oops. At that for you. Let me see. Got to find my screen share here, because the article that I had here for you. Let me find how to go to my screen share. I know I'm screen sharing. I want to screen news share. There we go. Okay. This here article is the great death pit of Ur, with mass human sacrifice in ancient Mesopotamia. So it was during Sir Charles Leonard Woolley's excavation of Ur from 1922 to 1934. Any burial without a tomb chamber was given the name death pit, also known as grave pits. Arguably, the most impressive death pit excavated by Woolley and his team was PG 1237, which Woolley dubbed the Great Death Pit due to the number of bodies that were found in it. These bodies were arranged neatly in rows and were richly dressed. It's commonly believed that these individuals were sacrificial victims who accompanied their master or mistress into the afterlife. It's unclear, however, if they had done so voluntarily. PG 1237, the most famous death pit at Ur. During Woolley's archaeological excavations at Ur, a total of 6 burials were assigned as death pits. Generally speaking, these were tombs and sunken courtyards connected to the surface by a shaft. These death pits were thought to have been built around or adjacent to the tomb of a primary individual. The hypothesis, however, has been challenged in recent times. In any case, the death pits discovered by Woolley and his team were filled with the remainders of retainers belonging to an important individual. Now, this is a picture here of there were a ram in the thicket found in the PG 1237. They were made of gold. Unbelievable. Now, if you remember the story of Abraham and the fact that he found the ram in the thicket, remember? We're going to go to the Bible in a minute, but remember, Abraham found the ram in a thicket so he didn't have to sacrifice his son, Isaac. So it would make sense that they found a ram in a thicket as part of the cache in this archaeological dig. The most impressive of Woolley's death pits in PG 1237, which was named by Woolley as the Great Death Pit. In the death pit, Woolley and his team identified a total of 74 individuals, 6 of whom were male and the rest female. The bodies of 6 men were found near the entrance of the death pit and were equipped with a helmet and weapons. It is thought that these men played the role of guards and were responsible for protecting the tomb from potential grave robbers. As for the women, the majority of them were arranged in 4 rows in the northwestern corner of the tomb, while 6 were under a canopy in the southern corner and another 6 near 3 lyres near the tomb's southwestern wall. All right. Woolley was of the opinion that the individuals in the Great Death Pit were the retainers of an important personage whose tomb chamber had been destroyed sometime in the past. This view, however, had been challenged in more recent times. And it goes on to tell you about that. Body 61 pointed out that one individual, Body 61, was more richly adorned than the rest of the female attendants. Unlike the other women who wore simple headdresses of gold, silver, and lapis lazuli, which is a beautiful blue stone, the headdress worn by Body 61 was more elaborate. With only other women known to possess a similarly ornate headdress is Puabi, who is generally regarded to have been a queen. The jewelry ensemble of Body 61 is also found to have resembled that of Puabi, an unknown royal woman in PG 1054. And so you can see the beautiful headdress, the jewelry, unbelievable. But long story short, it goes on to say that there were about 2,000 bodies found in these great pits with their skulls bashed in. A study conducted by the University of Pennsylvania Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology on the skulls of a woman and a soldier, however, found signs of premortem fractures caused by a blunt instrument. One of the theories emerging from this finding is that the dosage of poison consumed by some of the attendants was not enough to kill them, and therefore they were struck on their heads to prevent them from being buried alive. Alternatively, it has been suggested that the victims were first given a sedative and then clubbed to death when they were unconscious. This seems unlikely, however, as it would have been messier than necessary, and if true, then their skulls would have been displayed signs of premortem fracture, as seen in the two skulls that were studied. So that is very interesting. Uh, so kind of concerning. If you were part of these attendants to the Queen, you would have your skull bashed in. So here we go again with that. So the biblical let's go and see how we can line this up with the Bible. So in Genesis 11, there is a genealogy of Abraham, and it talks about Shem, actually, that if you remember Noah's 3 sons, one of them was Shem, right? So Abraham, whose name was at that time Abram, because God had not changed his name yet, Abram was the 10th generation from Shem. Abram's father's name was Terah, and he begat Abram. So let's go over to Genesis 11 and take a look. And then in Genesis 11:31 in particular, it says, and Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran, his son's son, and Sarah his daughter-in-law, and his son's Abram's wife, and they went forth with them from Ur of the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan, and they came into Haran and dwelt there. So if you go all the way back to Genesis 11, you will find the genealogy of Abraham. And it says that their nativity from Terah, he had 3 sons, and their nativity was Ur. So it all lines up that from the Bible, that this makes sense. And that's why that the Pope went to Ur, to this ziggurat, that would make sense, that was the birthplace of Abraham. It does line up with the Bible. But the interesting thing is that it makes sense that he is actually the 10th grandson of Shem, Noah's son Shem, which would make him the 11th grandson of Noah, actually. Terah, his father, had 3 sons, including Abram, and they were born in Ur. It says the nativity was in Ur of the Chaldees. Terah was actually the one who left Ur, and they went into Haran. So let me go over here to Genesis and read a little bit for you. I'll stop the share, and I'll go over here and read here for you a little bit out of Genesis. So Genesis 11 is actually where the Tower of Nimrod, or where the Tower of Babel happens. And it says in Genesis 11, and the whole earth was of one language and one speech. It came to pass that they journeyed from the east, and they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said to one another, go, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime they had for mortar. And they said, let us build a city and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven. Let us make a name, and we'll be scattered abroad the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the tower, which the children and men made. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they all have one language. And they began to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. So go, let us go down there and confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence and upon the face of the earth, and they led off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel. All right, so there you go. There's your Hebrew word Babel, which is now known as Babylon. They talked about the bricks for stone. How are these ziggurats made? They're made out of these bricks. it all lines up. It all makes sense. So there you're talking about as what could very well be a ziggurat construction. There is a ziggurats remain in Babylon. That all lines up with Genesis 11. So then you're talking about Genesis 11:10. These are the generations of Shem. I'm not going to read them all, but it reads all the way down to, and Terah lived 70 years and begat Abram. So there you go. And he begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Terah had 3 sons, Abram, Nahor, and and Haran. So those were his 3 sons. And then it says in Genesis 11:27, now these are the generations of Terah. And it goes on and he says, Terah begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran begat Lot. So that's how Lot came about. And Haran died before his father Terah in the land of his nativity in Ur of the Chaldees. So there's where it says they were born in Ur. And Abram and Nahor took them wives, and the names of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife Milcah, and the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, and the father of Iscah. But Sarah was barren and she had no child. So see, it's telling you the whole story here of Abram and his father being in Ur. And Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran his son's son, and Sarah his daughter-in-law, and his sons Abram's wife, and they went forth from Ur to the Chaldees to go to the land of Canaan, and they came unto Haran. So it tells you right there that they left Ur and they came into Haran. Now, if you go on into Genesis 12, it tells you the story of Abram. Now the Lord had said unto Abram, this is Genesis 12:1, get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land that I will show thee, and I will make thee a great nation. I will bless thee and make thy name great. Thou shalt be a blessing, and I will bless them that bless thee, and curse them that curse thee, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. So Abram departed as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. So they had already left Ur, and they were leaving out of now Haran. So that is the story that lines up with the Bible. It lines up with archaeology. So that is why the Pope visited the ziggurat of Ur. So I hope that you now understand a little bit more about why the Pope visited there. It also has a whole lot to do with the Gulf War because he was also following battles that had been fought there and bloodshed that had happened there, and he was praying for peace. And please remember all our Gulf War veterans as well. We still have a lot of PTSD that we need to remember every day, that our veterans are battling every day still, and prayers for all of them. So thank you all for listening, and thank you for supporting Patreon. I hope that this gives you a lot more information. The Ziggurats are very fascinating piece of history, ancient history. Of course, we'll never know everything that happened there, but just digging up what Sir Leonard Woolley did at Ur is quite fascinating indeed. Go ahead and take a look at the British Museum and the Philadelphia Museum, and you can learn a whole lot more. God bless.